It's a really interesting comparison. But they didn't do any real legwork to define what Euros's skills were and what her problems were. You know,
Yeah,
like
I think an interesting point of comparison would be the River Tam from the TV show, and then the River Tam from the from the film rather, where River Tam in the TV show is a really excellent version of what Eurus could have been, and then River Tam in the film is basically the same character as Eurus, where they just kind of skip a bunch of development to be like, yeah, like we don't have enough time. We need to get this film done. This is the last stab we get at this. Okay, she's a super ultra assassin when the trigger word happens, and it's like, okay, wait, what? And it takes a lot of that subtle work of the TV show and just makes it into like a blunt instrument, which I understand. It's a film; they only have so much time. Say what you will about that film. I know a lot of people have their gripes with it. I still think it's pretty excellent. But it's an interesting, like, you can see it done well, and then you can see it done less well. It's the same character, and it feels like also. And I don't know where to bring this up, so I feel like this is just a good enough opportunity as any. Also, I don't know why Steve insists on doing this, but Eurus is like bisexual, I guess. I don't know. Not explicitly, but
not really. It was more like she is so alien that she doesn't see people as male or female, and it doesn't matter to her whether the male is female because everyone is just really a brain and a body, and that's all that matters.
Yes, but that's how Moffat seems to view bisexuality throughout the body of his work, right? Like and I don't know why he does this. All of the smart women in his shows, which is to say, like most of the women who get to live, I should say, Mary not included. Yeah, they're all for some reason like attracted to both like sexes, and like just apparently you get to a certain level of intelligence and you're just like, I'm a fuck anything that moves, bro. I don't know what the hell is happening there mental. I mean, like, I kind of can guess, like, you know, I'm not in the business of visiting his life and his psychology, but if you look back at his history and who his executive producers have been and how involved his ex-wife is in his life, you can kind of like connect some dots there as to sort of potentially what's happening for Steve a lot of the time here. But I just think it's noteworthy. He does it to all of his leading female characters. You get that with Clara. You get it with here. You get it with Eurus. You get it in Doctor Who multiple times. It's just a really interesting trend in his work, I guess, for want of a better way of phrasing it. It's just interesting to me.
I mean, you could potentially make the inference that the smarter someone is, the more of their brain they unlock, and you could maybe argue that there's some block in our brains that make us either prefer one gender or the other, and once you're smart enough, that block just goes away, so then smarter people can just be attracted to anything.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, like, I mean,
maybe.
The idea of, like, attraction is, like, a social construct, so it's like, there's actually a really good Watsky song about it, where he's like, look, if I could, I'd suck a dick. I just happen to not want to. Like, you know, it'd give me a lot more options if I could, but I just don't want to, and that's like unfortunate, like socially. It's a very good song. It's called "Going Down." But definitely like there's a mechanism here that I think is repeated in a lot of his work. Joss Whedon does this as well. All of his like attractive, athletic, smart women happen to also be bisexual. There's just something as a maneuver happening there, which I just wanted to kind of call out for no particular reason other than I noticed it because I've been studying his work for this book, which we'll read the introduction to at the very end of this. Okay, Darth, talk to me about the patience grenade.
Let's I want to back up to an interesting line before we get there, because I don't know why I found this so fascinating, but sometimes just looking at a piece of dialogue and then trying to figure out why did that not hit right is just really interesting to me. And this scene right here, where Mycroft says, "This is family," and then Sherlock angrily shouts at him, "That's why John stays."
Ugh, so clunky.
But the idea would have been perfect if they had him deliver the line better. If Mycroft says, "This is a family business," and Sherlock is just like frustrated that Mycroft doesn't see it, and he's like, he is family, that's why he stays. Like, if he had delivered the line differently, it could have been brilliant instead of being so clunky.
Counter suggestion: you have him say nothing, and then
that would work too.
Brilliant. Sherlock and John could have exchanged a look and then both looked at Mycroft. That's what a better writer would have done here. Is like, this should have been subtextual.
Yeah.
They should have just let it. They should have let Mycroft come to that realization and then sit down. That's what I've been watching Mad Men, rewatching it for like the umpteenth time, and there are so many opportunities in that show where they could have had a character do something like this, and instead they don't say anything, and it's all about the acting and what's left unsaid. And when I was saying at the top of the episode that thing about indulgence and excess, that line of dialogue is a quintessential example of excess that need not be here. Good call out. I feel a similar way about that exchange with John and Mycroft in the previous scene. If you halved the amount of dialogue there, it would have been far superior.
Yeah, or even just, as you said, just have the same dialogue from one character and have the other character be silent, which forces the first one to really think about, hey, what did I just say? Because like, it would have been really powerful for Mycroft to just have to sit there and hear his own words, and then he probably would have had to actually apologize to John in that moment.
Yeah.
Because he would have had to have been like, dude, I know your family, I didn't mean that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Or even like, and that's a really good opportunity for like, show us where this character is now. Show us like, you know, he's frustrated in this moment. He's acted rashly. Show us what he's learned since season 1 about who he is and the people he's around. Like, this is an opportunity.
Yeah, because we've seen none of that. We've seen growth from the other characters, but not from Mycroft because he's too smart or something.
Well, you know, maybe. I think it depends how you read the previous episode and the Lady Smallwood stuff. But for me, at least, like, this episode is a real opportunity to show him and how much he's changed, and they just really back away from it in some pretty big ways. They kind of do the same for all these characters, to be completely honest. Probably with the absence of Sherlock, everybody is kind of just the stereotype of what their character was, which I think is curious given the Mary's line at the end where she's like, it doesn't matter who the characters were and who the people were, what matters is the stories. And I'm like, yeah, shut up, Steve. Because it really does feel like they don't give a shit about these characters. They care about the legend and the adventures. Yeah.
So the next... speaking of legends and adventures, that's like a straight call out to Mary's speech at the end, which I hated. Anyway.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. In fact,
so the next...
Yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. But bad is a very polite way of what that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the next bit of dialogue I was so fascinated by, which I already kind of talked about, was this is where we get the exposition that Euros was the smartest, most brilliant person ever. And it's at this point that if the audience is really thinking about it, they already know that this cannot be an intellectual competition, that the entire story has to take an emotional route because you can't beat the smartest person ever. It's not possible. So I think this scene should have been written completely differently because you can't introduce the smartest character without ruining the whole rest of the plot line, because you're focusing on different stuff. And that's probably why they had to have so much of the stuff in the prison. It had to be the emotional thing of, are they going to kill them? Are they not going to kill them? They couldn't do the deductions because they've already ruled out that you can't win this by thinking. You have to win it by emoting and connecting. And that all starts right here with this scene.
I think this is to your point earlier. They had the kind of prison stuff I ideated out, and they were sort of working backwards from it, which is fine. That's a way to write a story, but like it means that a lot of this doesn't feel adequately reworked to make that function. I also wondered to what extent this because okay, the idea that they can't outthink her, I'm not fully against, because that means that Sherlock and co have to demonstrate internal growth in their emotional intelligence and sense of self, which has been the biggest challenge to his character throughout the show, right?